Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Oh, I hope you're well. So I wanted to do a quick video today because the government has announced that it's going to ask the Competition and Markets Authority to look into private dentistry. And you may remember that in previous videos, I've around about the time that they imposed VAT on private schooling, I expressed a concern that they might sooner or later get around to imposing VAT on private dentistry. Now, that's not the suggestion at the moment, although it's not been ruled out. But what they're doing is they're asking the Competition and Markets Authority to investigate the functioning of the private dentistry market. So the in their sort of latest updates to the NHS fees, which has again, as I discussed at the time, I may, if I can find it, put a link in the show notes. But whatever, you're supposed to be watching these so that you know what I'm talking about. They did say that they're going to just tinker around the edges, £5 for taking on a new patient, £10 for taking on a patient and doing this and that and the other, etc. So it's all tiny amounts. And unlike the junior doctors, who are the got a 22% pay rise, which wasn't 22% because it had to cover an awful lot of backdated underpayments. So, but dentistry is very clearly split into two markets. There's the NHS monopsony. And I'm indebted to Professor Stephen Tidman, who introduced me to the word monopsony, which means it's the opposite of a monopoly. With a monopoly, you've got one person selling, so you have to pay the seller's price. And a monopsony is the opposite. It's where you've got only one person buying, so you have to pay the buyer's price. Or you have to charge the buyer's price, or you won't sell anything. So, and that was the problem with NHS. It was a monopsony, and if you wanted to work on the NHS, you had to accept NHS fees. And the way that you work around that is to decrease the amount of time, the quality of the materials, and the quality of the laboratory work that you put into doing each job. And so, obviously, the quality suffered considerably. And the last time I looked, and it may have changed, it may be more, it may be less, I don't know, probably more, is that it was about 3 to 1. In other words, you could earn on the NHS roughly 1/3 of the market rate. Now, part of me is a bit worried about this inquiry because Ken Weech, who funnily enough died recently, MP for Ipswich, always said that the government never holds an inquiry unless it knows the result, the outcome that it wants. And so I suspect that although there's this massive great appeal for input on any level, that we're going to end up with the same thing. Doesn't matter what the consultation is. The consultation is honoured in the breach, really, for the most part. In the same way as in the government brought in a law that said if you brought in anything new, you had to cost it and say what the likely cost was to the industry sector that you were bringing it in on. And so what happened was because nobody ever checked these things, that the people who brought the new laws in were just able to tack on a paragraph at the end, and it was always the same paragraph, and it pretty much said, we don't envisage any change in costs as a result of this. It's always revenue and cost neutral, and it never was. I mean, it's all. It's very much the Joe Sullivan School of Management, which was that you could solve every problem in the world if you just got up a couple of minutes earlier in the morning. And hello, there's some big waste disposal units there. He's having a little dance in the road. Yeah, and that's a strategy that works really well until you have to get up before you go to bed. So, I think that they probably got an idea what they're going to do. Now the question is, what are they going to do? Because the whole thing's based on a lie, basically. The dentistry market functions very well. I mean, I don't understand unless they're literally desperate. I think they're literally, they've got all these constituents saying, look, I've got no option to go private because there's no NHS in my area. But, it's hellishly expensive. It's on average, apparently, it's about £80 for a checkup. For a new patient, that's what we charge, 78. And something like 55 for a routine checkup. Now, we charge 45. What we do is we have it in 3 bands. If the patients come within 9 months, it's 35. If they've come within 2 years, it's 45. If they haven't come within 2 years or they're a new patient, then it's 78. And so we are obviously on the low side, but then we're not in central London, we're in East Kent. So the patients are quite free to go and see any dentist they like. It's not like they're tied into a contract. It's not like we make them sign a contract like a mobile phone company that says you have to pay us so much a month, or a utilities contract which says that if you leave us, you have to pay us all the profit that we would have got from you staying with us. There's nothing like that. It's a totally ad hoc arrangement. You can contract with a dentist for one course of treatment or even one filling, if that's what you want to do. And most of what they, say makes a market function, which is price transparency, quotations, and publishing fees online, was already introduced by the investigation that the Consumers Association instigated and in the Office of Fair Trading, I think at the time, carried out. And they said that dentists must, on their website, must say who the dentists are, what languages they speak, and then indicative fees, etc., etc. So the Competition and Markets Authority has published a document online. Having said they're going to investigate the market, they've sort of already published a guide to how to negotiate the private dentistry market. And basically it says all the stuff that you'd normally expect to say. See if you've got an NHS dentist locally, then it's likely to cost. Yes, tick. When you go there, make sure you discuss that with the dentist what treatment is the problem. Tick. You don't have to consent to any treatment that you don't want done. Tick. You are entitled to ask questions and ask for explanations. Tick. You are entitled to know in advance how much the cost is going to be. Tick. And so it's all very much, I don't know. So, I mean, I think it's a bit condescending to the consumer, to be quite honest. I mean, they are, they negotiate things like buying a house, taking out a mortgage, buying insurance, going around Tesco's and stuff like that. They pretty much know what they need. I don't know whether they are coming out with this simplified guide because they've decided that the lumpen proletariat is going to have private dentistry, and therefore they really do need to have it explained to them. I think if I was taking part in this survey, I would reply along the lines of, where the hell is my NHS dentistry, that I pay my taxes for? I think that would be a valid response. But they give it all away. They give it all away by just. Well, there's one paragraph about halfway down, and I'll overlay it on the video, and it says something like, most of the treatment that you require will be available on the NHS. But if you want something like cosmetic treatment, then obviously you'd have to pay to have that done privately, because I know cosmetic treatment is not available on the NHS. And so in that one paragraph, they've sort of given away the whole thinking behind behind this inquiry and the thinking at the Department of Health and the people sort of still in charge of NHS dentistry at the top level. And basically, the thinking dates back decades. It goes back to the dental strike in 1990s, where we were frustrated because dentists were withdrawing from the NHS because they had a choice. I mean, that's the thing about dentists. They always have a choice. They can either work on the NHS or they can work privately. And increasingly, they're choosing to work privately because they've got, if they're in case of surgeries like my dentist, they've got shareholders, and it's the duty of the company to maximize shareholders' revenue. Or if they're private dental chains, they've still got to maximize revenue. So even a surgery which is like synonymous with NHS, which is the My Dentist chain in the southeast, is now more private than NHS, and it sort of gives away the lie that that they went into it because they wanted to help the beleaguered NHS patients. That they wanted to set up an NHS chain where NHS dentistry worked, whether through economies of scale or buying purchasing agreements, across chains. And it wasn't at all, and it never was. And they did it for the same reason that every individual dentist did it, which was that there's pretty much unlimited demand if you say you're doing NHS, and you then set about persuading all those patients to go private, and without telling them that you're doing a rubbish job on the NHS, which is the one mistake you can make. If you say you should have a private crown because the NHS crown is crap, then you'll get into trouble. But if you say, I recommend you have a private crown because it's technically difficult, and the private crown will look much better, and we'll have more time available, and we'll be able to use better quality materials and better quality labs. And the patient then says, yeah, well, that actually all makes sense to me. I'll on this occasion, I'll go private. Then that's fine. Then you're quids in. I mean, you may not be quids in because, to be honest with you, you don't really earn as much privately as people think you do. Sometimes you can earn by being a sort of a shonky dentist and thrashing the NHS, even in its current state. You might still be able to make a fortune if your standards are low enough. But but let's not kid ourselves that even the brands which are synonymous with acceptance of NHS patients, the ones that everybody refers to, the ones that I say when someone rings up and says, I need to, do you do NHS? And I say, no, we don't, but can we help you, And they say, well, no, I've absolutely got to have an NHS patient because I've got no money. And we say, well, okay with them, well, hire yourself down to Southcliffe Dental Practice, which is taking on NHS patients. And for every one of those, we get 5 back who say, I've decided to go on private because I went to Southcliffe Dental Practice, and they are appalling. They are, they've got no appointments. They never answer the phone. The dentist is very rude. The dentist only takes 2 minutes. The dentist has told me to have a tooth out and I want a second opinion. All of this we get back. But it's a shame these patients have to be damaged so much in the first place. But the point is that, and this paragraph that they've got in the consultation says something along the lines of all the treatment that you require should be available on the NHS, apart from cosmetic. Now, I heard that phrase, as I say, in the 90s, and we were exasperated by it then. We knew it wasn't true. All the profession knew it wasn't true, and the patients knew it wasn't true. And I would wager that the Department of Health knew it wasn't true and have known for the best part of 30 years. But that has always been the line. They never say, yeah, no one will ever say, in some parts of the country, you may have to go private to obtain even basic dentistry. They always maintain this fiction that NHS dentistry is available to all of NHS dentistry is available to everybody all the time in every part of the country. And they have to do that because they tax everybody all the time in every part of the country. So they can't suddenly say, well, NHS dental treatment is no longer viable in London, because the people in London will start saying, well, in that case, I'm going to have a serious chat with you about whether I need to pay my national insurance, which we all know is just a general tax and goes into the general pot in the Treasury. But, but nominally, it is in the minds of the public intended for healthcare. So what you've got is you've got a market which is working very well. I mean, it's actually market forces make sure that the private dentistry market does work very well. In fact, and the only reason why it does work very well is because, to a large extent, it's unregulated and is subject only to market forces. And as you know, I'm a great fan of market forces. I think that they allocate resources efficiently and allocate capital efficiently. And I know, I can tell you from my experience in Kent that we do keep an eye on the fees that the other dentists are charging in the area. Only in our local area. I mean, I wouldn't try and compete with someone in Barnsley, for example, because that's that most people don't go to. They haven't got a choice of a dentist in East Kent or Barnsley. So we compete locally, and we notice it. Sometimes we put the cost of stuff up, and we notice other dentists follow us, or sometimes other dentists put the price of cost up, and we realise we're a bit underpriced on stuff. And dentistry has gone up. They say 22% or something. I think that's the headline figure for checkups. I don't think they've actually done any analysis on the cost of the course of treatment. And that's the other problem. They can't understand that people can't shop around like they can for cornflakes, because you have to make a purchase really to find out how much it's going to cost. It's a bit more like a garage. If you go to a garage and they say that you need a new steering rack, and you're not sure that you do need a new steering rack, you have to take it to another garage, and then you may have to pay them again. They've got, garages charge for inspection and testing, examination, diagnosis, treatment planning. And you have to pay for that to get a quote. And I think that's what the establishment chokes on. They choke on the fact that you almost have to register with a dentist to get a quote. Now we do charge for examination, diagnosis, and treatment planning, and many of our patients don't come back. I would say typically a third. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not because they have gone somewhere else. And well, let me put it this way. I think it's almost always because they want to have the treatment done, but they haven't organised the finances. It's not because they come see us and say, well, actually, I think I could get better value for money somewhere else. Almost always they want to come and see us, but we're just a bit out of their price bracket. They still want to come and see us. Sometimes you occasionally get a patient ring up and say, can you just stop sending me reminders because I've managed to get in with an NHS dentist? And I always a little bit in two minds of those patients, of whether to say, oh, congratulations or hard luck. But we don't mind. We take them off the list, and that's it. Fine. Then they can go to the NHS dentist, and then in 2 years' time or 5 years' time, they'll come back and say, I want to come back and see you because X has gone wrong. And I'll say, that's fine. No, you're still on our books. Even from 5 years ago, you're still on our books. And so we still regard you as a patient, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't matter, if And we have patients who try quite hard to get a quote off us without ever seeing us. And they ring us up and they say, no, I think I need a crown. How much is a crown? And we say, well, I can't tell you that over the phone. We've got indicative prices on the website that they do go from X to X, but then they go from, like a Gradia type crown to a full ceramic gorgeous crown, which costs twice as much. It could be anything with 300, 600. So are you going left? Yes. Are you going right? Yes. Are you going right? Yes. Go on. Yeah. Mr. Middleton, tipper services. You've got a good old load on there. Going to be tipped somewhere. So the biggest thing that I'm worried about, and I'm always worried about worrying about things out loud, because there is some talk that they may impose price controls on private dentistry, which would be a disaster. And I'm not saying it wouldn't make any difference to me, but it'd be a disaster for the patients. Now, why price controls? Well, if a sufficiently large bunch of voters goes along to their local MP and whinges about the cost of something, then the MP might feel inclined to intervene. And government intervention is the worst thing that can happen to any industry and for any consumer. And the reason is that the government, whatever the government touches, turns to shit. And if the government money isn't worth so much, which it isn't, if you look at inflation over the last 10 years or so, the purchasing power of the pound has dropped right down. And the government is spending so much on entitlement benefits, and now latterly they've got the the war, what's it called, the armaments industries, increasingly successfully lobbying them to spend more and more money on blowing shit up. That they are, they haven't got any money to fund a decent dental service that costs 3 times what they're already spending. I think they're quietly happy that the cost of the NHS dental service has gone down as fewer and fewer people use it. But now it's pretty much, I would say, pretty much collapsed. They are thinking of wangles, ways to do something. And the idea that you can just wave a magic wand and get the price of private dentistry down just by setting, let's say, an upper limit on the fee that you can charge for a filling, I think is just the most crassly stupid thing. But not outside the wit of this government, which is a collectivist government and does believe that they are the masters of the universe and what they say will happen, and etc., etc. I mean, the other way they could do it, of course, is to subsidize it by paying some money towards private dentists. And I think that in a way, that's a good thing in a way, and also a bad thing. I think the good thing, if they put the NHS, the money that they would spend on an NHS patient towards that patient, if that patient then decided to go private, I think we've always said that would be a good workaround and that wouldn't cost them any more, because market forces would keep the cost of dentistry down. But if they subsidize dentists, or start to subsidize dentistry in the way they did with the mortgage interest relief at source scheme on mortgages and things like that, and the way that the American government does a lot, then all you do is you just put the price up. So, for example, if you if you start allowing students to borrow £9,000 a year towards their tuition fees, then what happens is the tuition fees go up £9,000 a year. It really does not work. When the government does that, they have to increase taxation, or bearing in mind taxation is about as high as it can ever get. They have to print money. And it's like Peter Schiff's father's analogy that the government subsidises you by taking blood out of your right arm and transfusing it into your left arm and spilling off in the process because of administration fees and the cost of running the government. So price control, though, is a symptom of a desperate government that's got no money. And it's been tried in many occasions, and it's not usually tried with private dentistry. It's usually tried with milk and eggs and bread, stuff like that. And what happens is the milk and the eggs and the bread disappear. They start getting sold under the counter. And so instead of having expensive milk and eggs and bread, you have no milk and eggs and bread. The cure for high prices, as they say, is high prices, which means that as the prices go up, people buy less of it. They find other ways of doing it. They spend less of it, spend less on it, etc. And so prices drop to a point where they can afford it. And the Competition and Markets Authority, if they're not just a government tool, a quango, they should know this. And really, the best response to their survey would be to leave the F alone, because the market's working fine. It's the NHS market that's not working. It's the NHS monopsony which is not working. And it's the government's fiscal policy and the Bank of England's monetary policy which is not working. Now, the private dentistry market's working fine. And if they bring in price control for private dentistry, then obviously we'll just stop doing ceramic crowns and we'll just do Gradia crowns. Except for the people who know us really well, who will still get the ceramic crown. Nod, nod, wink, wink. So there'll be a stupendously stupid idea. But let's see. I might come back. Obviously I'll do a report on the report when they report. Okay, nice to talk to you. Bye.